What is your take on that?
My take on that is, first and foremost, I have realized, as I said with the race issue, that a lot of the times it's not Black Americans behind it. It's not LGB behind this trans agenda. I've spoken to tons of people that are on the left, lesbian, gays, and they are uncomfortable.
Okay.
With what they don't even understand why they're being forced to pretend to defend this. I mean, LGB really has nothing to do with T.
Right.
And they've been able to amass a lot of power, push through policies. California just proposed a bill that
Are you serious?
boys and girls sections, that would make boys and girls sections in retail stores and online stores illegal, and that people that have signs that say boys section, girls section will get fined $1,000, right? You can't tell me that gays and lesbians got together and were like, this is just unbelievable.
Fact.
So there's something political that's pushing this, and they're hiding behind the LGB people to try to push that through, which is interesting, and it's super alarming. But
okay, I'm listening. You have my attention.
But in regards to children identifying, which is definitely happening, they're being encouraged in the school system. So again, there's something coming down the political pipeline that's encouraging them to see. And then you have these woke parents who are like, well, this is just who my child is. Wow! And what I always say is that if you show me a trans child, it's like showing me a vegan dog. You know who's making the decisions.
Right.
It's just like, my dog's a vegan. No, your dog's not. You know what I mean? My child's trans. No, your child's not. You are, putting this lifestyle upon the child because you just don't think. I grew up. I've been a kid. You don't think like that when you're a kid. You don't think in terms of sexual identification, gender identification. You hardly even know what this stuff even means.
Fact.
You just kind of want to run around a playground and have some fun. I was the ultimate tomboy when I was, I would probably say from 6 to 10. I was just like, I just wanted to hang out with the boys.
Stop it.
Wanted to wear baggy clothes. And thank goodness that I grew up in the 90s, because my mother wasn't like, well, you're Michael. You're obviously Michael. You know what I mean? They were just like, you're Candace going through a tomboy phase. And then, when I got older, suddenly I thought those boys I was running around the playground with were attractive. So these kids are not even being allowed to grow up, and their parents are pigeonholing them into these decisions, which if you grow up and, allow that to happen, this is going to end up with depression, suicide. The rates are staggering for transgender.
That doesn't make sense.
Individuals who actually transition and commit suicide thereafter. There's a lot of transitioning regret, and it's because they don't have parents parenting, and that's sad.
Yeah. To your point about this not being an LGB thing, but
Okay, I'm listening. You have my attention.
T thing, when you look at the numbers, the L lesbians are being basically erased in the younger generations as we see the trans numbers go up. And it's also,
Hey, y'all, come look at this.
it's interesting you say as a tomboy, if you were a tomboy now with some of the modern parents, they'd say you were trans. And that's why it's this irony where actually the left has made gender a more rigid
Are you serious?
thing, because now it's actually, if you're a girl, you're not allowed to behave
Right.
like a boy, because if you do, now you become a boy.
Right.
So for a long time, it seemed like they were saying, well, just because let's open up, let's be more open-minded.
Wait for it.
And if you're a girl, doesn't mean you have to play with dolls. You can play
Right.
with trucks too. I'm on board for that.
Mm-hmm.
But now they've kind of contradicted themselves, and they said, well, come to think of it, if you're a girl playing with the trucks, maybe you're actually a boy. So
Right. Yeah, they've made it more rigid. And that's what I say in terms of race, too. These things that they focus on, they say that they're trying to make things better. They always worsen them. That it wasn't an issue for girls to play with guys. If I was in the toy store and saw a boy's sign and a girl's sign, I don't even know if I was reading it at the time that I was going to Toys R Us, which is now extinct. But secondly, if I wanted to go into the boys aisle and grab something, I would have just done it. My parents would never been like, what are you doing in the boys aisle? I never felt traumatized that there were they were filtering products. And by the way, guys they gravitate towards different things. Oh my God! My brother played with entirely different things. We wanted the Barbies. It wasn't because of a gender construct, We wanted the Barbies. I wanted to take care. I wanted to pamper. I wanted a baby doll. Those maternal instincts happen at such a young age. My
Hey, y'all, come look at this.
brother, he wanted video games. He wanted trucks. He wanted things that I just wouldn't have played with. But nothing was stopping us from playing with the other toy. It's certainly not our parents.
yeah, that's my first kids were boy-girl twins.
Oh my God!
And, you bring them to the playroom, got all the toys laid out, and even at 2 years old, they tend to gravitate towards their gender typical toys. But it's not like I'm standing there to my son, get your hands off that doll. That's, trucks are for you, son.
Yeah.
Now, okay, we got to talk about your show. That's supposed to be the main topic here. We've gone off, and I'm not a very good interviewer. I'm taking us on
It's fine.
a circuitous
It's fun.
path.
It's best when they're just natural, you know?
So your show is debuting soon. Can you tell us? Even here, it's been sort of like mysterious. What is the Candace show?
Very mysterious.
I heard there's going to be an audience. I heard these kind of things. So can you tell us about the show? Can you
Wait for it.
give us
a lot of rumors.
Yeah.
So I think, we kind of just wanted to create something that hasn't really been done before for conservatives. And the time is super opportune, right? You have minimally 80 million Americans who just feel like they're not being heard right now. And who feel like they're being castigated for their political views. And it also feels like we've been increasingly shut out of culture. Like, we can't have, conservatives aren't allowed to be funny. They're not allowed to have live audiences. This is not a thing that conservatives are allowed to do. So we are doing a live audience show, and it will be very much in the vein of a lot of the old school late night talk shows when they were actually fun, right? When they actually had a sense of humor and they weren't so polarizing and done entirely at the expense of half of the country. And so I always say to people, I wanted to create something, and it's so funny to me to say this now, but when I was growing up, I loved Chelsea Lately. Before she went lefty, wacko, couldn't take a joke, and now she's taking Xanax to deal with the election results. She was funny. Once upon a time, Chelsea Handler was actually funny and irreverent and had a sense of humor and made fun of everyone. And it was a feel-good show. It had a panel. So there were elements that I really loved and missed about having a woman who could have a sense of humor and not take herself so seriously, first and foremost, and just kind of creating a show that does still also have
Okay, I'm listening. You have my attention.
a real purpose. We're not sitting around talking about celebrities like she was talking about, but we are talking about these sort of really important political issues that are getting lost because a lot of the times, the news cycle moves so quickly that it's almost, we're all ADD, right? 1 second you're trying to talk about this issue and then they've kicked it and they're talking about this issue. And I really wanted to sort of get people focused on these issues like we just talked about in this show to really understand what is happening in this country, how serious it is, but also to give them a message of hope. And that's through my monologue and my epilogue. What would you say at the end when you say something at the end? Epilogue, maybe?
called epilogue, sure.
Yeah, but like the opposite of an epilogue is a prologue, and I wouldn't call the monologue the prologue. Well, I guess it's a monologue prologue. Yeah, and then it's a monologue epilogue.
Or just call it the monologue at the end.
Yeah.
The simplest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Monologue at the end.
Yeah.
And sort of giving them a sense of hope and letting people know, okay, it does kind of feel like the world's on fire and we're just watching it burn. But there are some things to feel hopeful about. People are fighting back. People are winning. And to invite, for the interview segment,
Okay, I'm listening. You have my attention.
it's Americans, of course there will be some celebrities put onto the show as well, but also I'm inspired by a lot of Americans that are fighting back, students who are fighting back against the indoctrination that's happening at their schools, and it's going to be a really fun show.
Are you serious?
That's bringing the hope into it is good because and that'll be good to inject a little bit of sunlight here because I'm just doom and gloom. That's my perspective is we're all doomed.
Some people like to watch the world burn, right?
Yes.
That's your show.
So, but it's I think it's hard to inject sometimes actual hope in a way that's real and substantive and not superficial. So.
Right, and to inspire people, like I said, I was reading a story about these literal, I'm trying to get them on my show, but these Catholic teens who were going to school obviously at the time of George Floyd protesting, and when everyone just went super woke, and one of their classmates had gone back and found old pictures of them where the kid had acne. In
Stop it.
one picture he had an all-white face mask, next picture he had an all-green face mask with his two buddies, and they just said, that's blackface. Green mask, acne mask. He actually had acne. The school,
That is insane.
he got expelled. And they said, we know you didn't actually do this, but it's very important for us to send a political message right now in this time. Incredible.
Hang on, he got expelled.
He got expelled.
For
they said you
using
either,
acne
yeah, you
medication.
either withdraw or we're going to expel you. And his parents withdrew and then lawyered up.
Oh my God!
And are suing and are actually winning, right? And so that's kind of the message people need to hear. Because I always get these questions of like, what can I do? What can I do? Fight. You got to fight. This is not a time now to say, what can I do? Your parents, you got to fight for your students. Fact. You got to go in. Let me jump right into providing you some passages. And let's just start with the prologue of the book, because this is actually in it. Ready? Quote, "All at once, something shifted inside of me. I looked at Willie, really looked at him.
Okay.
Maybe for the first time since we were boys, I took it all in. His familiar scowl, which had always been his default in dealings with me. His alarming baldness, more advanced than my own.
That doesn't make sense.
His famous resemblance to Mummy, which was fading with time, with age. In some ways, he was my mirror. In some ways, he was my opposite. My beloved brother, my arch nemesis. How had this happened? His alarming baldness. He's alarmed by his brother's receding hairline. He felt the need to put that in a book because it's petty and it's small to offer commentary on how your brother is losing his hair. And it's petty and it's small to say that you don't even look like mommy anymore because you lost your hair.
What do you mean by that?
And petty and small is really what this book is all about. Now, what's incredible is that Harry obviously grew up in palaces. So there's just no way that we can connect, right? How many of us have grown up in palaces? How many of us can write a passage in our book about how we grew up in a castle with our brother?
Good question.
A castle that had 50 bedrooms. He's talking about the castle in Scotland, which was one of the Queen's favorites. Balmoral had 50 bedrooms. He says in chapter 2, one of which had been divided for me and Willie. Adults called it the nursery. Willie had the larger half with a double bed, a good-sized basin, a cupboard with mirrored doors, a beautiful window looking down on the courtyard, the fountain, the bronze statue of a roe deerbuck. My half of the room was far smaller, less luxurious. I never asked why. I didn't care, but I also didn't need to ask. 2 years older than me, Willie was the heir, whereas I was the spare.
I said, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait, first of all, you're not going to speed past that like you didn't just say what you just said.
Well, you see, Harry, what happens when you divide a room is that somebody does have to get the less better half. Somebody gets the view, somebody doesn't. And typically, Harry, in case no one has ever told you this, the older sibling always gets the bigger room. The bigger side, the bigger everything, because they're the older sibling. This is not unique to you. It is not because you are the spare. It is not because he is the heir. This happens in households all over the world. In fact, I am one of 3 sisters, and we had an older brother.
Nice.
My older brother, would you believe, us 3 sisters had to share a room while our older brother got his own room growing up?
What?
Were we the 3 spares? Is it worthy of putting it into a book? Of course not, but it's not enough because he goes on to describe this dynamic. I was brought into the world in case something happens to Willie. I was summoned to provide backup, distraction, diversion, and if necessary, a spare part.
Is he all right upstairs?
A kidney, perhaps. Blood transfusion. A speck of bone marrow. This is the best part. This was all made explicitly clear to me from the start of life's journey and regularly reinforced thereafter.
Stop it. Get some help.
Oh, does anybody actually believe that it was made explicitly clear to him that they might need him for a speck of bone marrow? This is not even how it works. It's just because you're siblings. Hey, I want to be very clear. Second sibling, you are here for a speck of bone marrow. You're here for a blood transfusion, perhaps, a kidney, perhaps. That's why you're here. And we want to make that explicit. Does he even know what explicit means? I mean, that is such a ridiculous lie. That any person told him that he existed for a speck of bone marrow. But go with it, guys. Go with it, because he really needs you to realize that these very mundane things that he's experiencing as the younger brother, it's deep and it's a lot. It gets harder because you're not going to believe this.
Okay.
Then him and his brother went to the same school, and that school is Eton. It's an all-boys school. It holds boys from the ages of 13 to 18. It's considered the best school in the UK.
Yeah, right.
He talks about how once he became enrolled in the school, you're not going to believe this, his older brother wanted to make it clear that he didn't want to hang out with him in the school, right? Which is pretty normal. Let's hear it in Harry's old world, because I couldn't dramatize it in the way that he does with his own words.
Okay.
Harry says, Willie told me to pretend that I didn't know him. What? You don't know me, Harold, and I don't know you. For the last 2 years, he explained, Eton had been his sanctuary. No kid brother tagging along, pestering him with questions, pushing up on his social circle. He was forging his own life, and he wasn't willing to give that up.
What do you mean by that?
For Willie, it was pure agony to wear the same blazer, the same tight shorts as me. And now to attend the same school was pure murder.
What?
I told him not to worry. I'll forget I ever knew you. Pure murder. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine that taking place? Siblings saying, hey, don't even talk to me in school. Oh, I bet you could imagine, because this happens in every household. Fact. I actually had the unique scenario where me and my two sisters, because we were all exactly a year and a half apart, all three of us went to the same high school at the exact same time. And of course, we were trying to forge our own existences. We did not want to hang out with each other. We would yell at each other if we wore the same shirt, the same color. We would pull up at school, and I would look at my little sister and be like, don't even look at me today. Don't even look at me if you see me in the hallway. Stop hanging out with the same people as me. I remember, and I'm just coming out with this now because God forbid my little sister writes a book, and it's called Spare, and she talks about the trauma that I put her through. I did this, I want to come clean. When Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera were both dropping their music in the 2000s, I told my sister that she had to pick whether or not she was Team Christina or Team Britney.
That doesn't make sense.
And she said she liked both of their music, and I told her she had to pick, and she picked Britney, and I told her that she wasn't allowed to listen to Christina Aguilera's music or hang out with anybody that liked Christina Aguilera like I did.